Millions of people worldwide suffer from various diseases because of poor nutrition. And that's why James Collier is going to cover today the optimum nutrition for peak performance. And he's the co-founder of Huel, registered nutritionist and author. And his company sold 400 million meals to global places. So tell us, James, what is the optimum nutrition for peak performance?
Welcome to Awakened Titans podcast with Lily Patrascu. Mind-blowing conversations with influential business titans sharing how you can manifest abundance, love, joy, success through quantum awakening, quantum manifestation, quantum healing, quantum miracles, exponential business growth, and innovative products and services.
Well, slight nuance there. Firstly, glad to be here, but optimum nutrition is subjective, right? We're all different people. We're complex organisms that have evolved over billions of years. And even humans, Homo sapiens, are maybe 400,000 years old. So we all have different requirements. But broadly speaking, there are a few key things that we can focus on. Make sure you're getting enough protein, because it's good for satiety. It helps keep us feeling full. Make sure you're getting plenty of fiber. Not many people talk about fiber. It just doesn't sound cool, but we need a good amount. And there's things like omega-3s. You might have heard that oily fish is good for you. And that's because of these omega-3s that you can also get from plant foods like hemp seeds, walnuts, flaxseed, chia. So how does that relate to food? Eat a varied diet, mostly plant-based. If you choose to have a bit of meat, that can be okay, but there are environmental concerns there. And plenty of whole grains, and make sure you're having plenty of fruit and veg.
Thank you. You talk in your book, Well Fed, How Modern Diets Are Failing Us, about how the people worldwide tend to just eat the wrong thing. So tell us more about that.
People are unfortunate and unprivileged enough to be able to have food choices. Here in the West, many of us are eating too much food, so much we're throwing most of it away. There is enough food in the world to feed every human being alive. It's just not reaching some people. This could be due to things like war and famine. For example, a couple of months ago, only for the fourth time in 20 years has a famine been declared in the world, and that was in Sudan due to the war there. But there should be enough for everyone. But if you are privileged enough to have access to good amounts of food, a lot of us are making poor food choices, aren't we? We're having all these junk food, highly processed, high fat, sugar, salt, low fiber, low micronutrient foods. Now, we can make better food choices, but we are in an environmental crisis. There are concerns about sustainability, concerns about ethics and the treatment of animals, right? And I like to think that we're bigger than ourselves. And what we eat, what we choose to eat to fuel our own body, also will affect others and the planet around us as well. So I try and just keep all these things. The book's about keeping these things conscious up front of mind at the same time. That is, eating for our physical health, our mental health, sustainability in the environment, ethics. But there's one other thing too, and this is really important. I think your listeners are going to love this one. It's not just what we eat, it's how we eat and who we eat with. It's the benefits of community, the benefits of meals. And although Huel products are convenient food on the go, wherever we can, we should be encouraging people to eat with others, prepare meals together and eat good food.
Thank you. Why is it that when someone eats a particular meal and another person eats that same meal, they don't get similar results? What's the difference there in terms of, is it their hormones? Is it something else that impacts the result they're getting in terms of their performance, their weight, and everything else?
Question, Lily. We are complex beings that have got a different genetics, so that could affect their hormones, but also we're brought up in different environments. For instance, some people, let me take two extremes for an example. Some kid who's grown up in Sri Lanka can tolerate a different diet to, say, someone who grew up in Norway. You think of the extreme diets there and the spicy foods. So if you were a Norwegian adult and you've never had spicy foods, you're going to have a bit of an issue the first time you have a strong Sri Lankan dish. But on the flip side, there's a reason that these foods are more tolerated by certain people. The reason why they've become ingrained culturally as well as physiologically, because they reduce risk of, say, pathogenic disease and food poisoning and things like that. So food is complex. Now, there's a problem on social media at the moment, and most people will have come across this. You've got social media influencers going out there being very prescriptive, saying you must eat this way. And that's because maybe in the past they followed a specific type of diet after eating very poorly, and it's helped them. And so they want to tell the world about it and share it. But yet, if someone else were to try that diet, say maybe the keto diet, which is where there's predominant fat and a bit of protein and almost no carbs, someone else might just not get on well with it. So we're all different, and we must embrace this nuance. And maybe you can play around and try some different dietary strategies yourself to see what helps you if you've got any issues. But for most of us, we are what I call adaptables, and that's a term I introduce in the book. And that means we can acquire a large amount. We can acquire nutrition from a large amount of different foods, more so than any other species.
Thank you. What elements should we introduce in our food to make sure that we have the right energy in order to have peak performance?
To be kind of subjective, but I think if you base your meals around whole grains and fruit and veg, and then make sure you've got enough protein coming from we need a good amount of protein. For, as I said earlier, it's more satiating, but it's also, I'm going to share an interesting fact about protein that most people don't know. And that is protein has got a lower caloric availability than the other macronutrients. What does caloric availability mean? Okay, I'm going to illustrate that with an example. Let's say you have 100 calories worth of sugar. Around about 99 of those calories will go on to be utilized in the body. However, if you have 100 calories worth of protein, then maybe as low as 70 of those calories will go on to be utilized in the body, which means you can have a higher volume of food feel more satisfied and for fewer calories. So protein should be a key part of the meal. However, if you look at protein's become a bit of a marketing term, hasn't it? High protein. Oh, I've got to have that. It's really good for me because it's high protein. Most people in the West are getting plenty of protein. Now, you don't have to have animals for protein, although in some respects it's easier. But I have a real ethical concerns with the way that a lot of modern farming systems are carried out, and animals are mistreated. And this also could manifest into the nutrition of those of what we have, because if those animals are not being fed the right food, that's going to manifest into what we eat. So I say try and cut down on the amount of meat and dairy we have. If you want to go vegan, brilliant. But I'm not a vegan, and I possibly never will be, but I do have a lot less meat than most people. For instance, the Western average is about 28 to 30% of calories coming from animal products. I try and limit mine to around 10%, so about a third of what most people have. And then I make up the rest of my protein from pulses, which I would have as a meal with rice and things like that, and nuts and seeds as well. And also, there's a lot of meat alternatives available these days. So just eating a varied diet with a lot of different foods based on whole grains, some protein sources, plenty of fruit and veg, you should be getting adequate nutrition.
Thank you. In my case, I've noticed a considerable energy surge when I'm creating, for example, a smoothie made out of moringa and spirulina and turmeric and wheatgrass and so I wonder whether you recommend utilizing any of these in order to boost the energy levels, because as entrepreneurs, you wake up, you have your coffee or you have whatever you have in the morning, and then there is like a little bit of a crash that may happen around noon. And that's when you're supposed to be productive and you're supposed to have a lot of meetings, and you're not able to have the privilege of taking a nap around noon. So what do you recommend?
It's interesting, isn't it? Often people get this fatigue after eating. So we call that postprandial fatigue. You've described getting it around lunchtime. a lot of people, me included, I get it mid-afternoon. So if I have lunch, then I get that sort of fatigue mid-afternoon where I can't wait for the day to end. Oh, I've still got the gym to go to. How am I going to get through? So going back to your sort of smoothie, sounds great. Moringa's really interesting. It's a good carb source and a good source of vitamins and minerals. And you mentioned a couple of other ingredients there that could be quite interesting. Spirulina was one you mentioned, which is, people call it a type of algae. Technically it isn't, but we won't go down there. We haven't got time. But, but that's a great protein source as well. And also, didn't I just mention the omega-3 fats earlier? Spirulina will give you some omega-3s as well. So that's great. I mean, obviously, I'm the co-founder of Huel and the nutritionist behind the original Huel products. So I've got to give a little plug to my product here, where that's got all the macronutrients, vitamins and minerals that you need, available in a powdered form, or a lot of people will be familiar with Huel as something you get in the supermarkets or petrol stations, gas stations, that you can grab and go, the bottled format. And we also have a hot and savoury format too. So our meals provide all the essential nutrients, high in good quality carbs, high in protein, essential fats, high fibre. Like I said earlier, not most of us aren't getting enough fibre, and all the vitamins and minerals. So it can be a great source of nutrition, because most people who maybe are experiencing the symptoms you described, Lily, are probably not making good food choices. Maybe they're having a high sugar, low fibre breakfast in the morning, and then they're getting that crash later on, or they're having white bread. Now, if they were to have something fibrous, could be Huel, but doesn't have to be. Porridge, oatmeal, whatever you call it, wherever you're from in the world, can be a great nutritious source as well, maybe with some berries. The smoothie, like you described, sounds great. I don't know whether all the ingredients in there you probably need. I mean, turmeric, you mentioned as well. There is really good evidence that that's helpful for athletes, for recovery after exercise. So maybe it helps most of us. Wheatgrass, there's some vitamins and minerals in it, but it doesn't have to be these things. I don't want anyone feeling they have to have any of these so-called superfoods, whatever that term means, when there are some really key basic nutrients, basic foods that provide plenty of nutrients.
Thank you. In terms of coffee, do you recommend people to drink coffee in order to get a little boost, or do you recommend that they replace that with matcha or reishi or a lion's mane mix in order to get an energy boost that is longer term?
Yeah, that's a really good. That's another big question. You're coming out with some good questions this morning. Coffee is great, right? It's a source of caffeine, and caffeine is a cognitive boost, gives us focus, helps us feel like we've got more energy, and it's brilliant. Now, the problem with caffeine is it can keep us awake at night if we have it too late, but also if we have too much early on in the day. So the half-life of caffeine is 5 to 6 hours. That means it's but if you have some of it, there's still half of it left in your body after 5 or 6 hours. That means the quarter life of caffeine is 8 to 12 hours. So if you think about it, you're having 4 big mugs of coffee during the morning before 12. That could mean that by bedtime, you've still got 100 milligrams of caffeine left in your blood, which could mean it's just like having a cup of coffee just before you go to bed. And most of us wouldn't do that. So caffeine, great in moderation. Now, some of the other things you've mentioned are just forms of caffeine in another form, maybe lower than coffee. Great if you enjoy them. You mentioned lion's mane though. I've got to admit, I'm not well up on my research here. I've only skimmed a bit of the research, but I will say one thing. It's very interesting, and we should be watching out for it. And subjectively, a lot of people are raving about it, but that'd be through a different mechanism to caffeine. It will affect the brain cognitively in different ways. So you use the word energy, which is quite a broad term. I'd say lion's mane is maybe not for energy in as such, but more for focus and feeling more cognitively positive, maybe. And it's subjective, right? So it's what the individual feels like they get on with. I mean, you've just seen me slurping a coffee here. I like a good amount of caffeine. That was half caff that I've just had, because it's in the UK, it's midday now, and I know that I've got to start thinking about bed, albeit in 10 hours' time.
Thank you. When it comes to food intolerances, I'm intolerant to 7 things. Okay. And I choose to still eat all the things that I'm intolerant to because everything that I love is actually exactly the things I'm intolerant to. But I did notice that I am potentially a little bit weaker because of it. What do you recommend for entrepreneurs to do to make sure that their energy kind of like stays up for a longer period of time? Do you recommend that they take an intolerance and allergy test? Because if they actually continue eating certain things they're allergic to, they could get all the different minerals and all the different things from the food that they are eating, but they are somehow not helping their body to cope because of those specific allergies and intolerances that they have.
Hey, this is an interesting question and a good one. Again, food intolerance is more of a catch-all term that would include things like genuine allergies, which would be by a process, a complex process in the body involving certain things called immunoglobulins, especially IgG or IgE. There are autoimmune disease, which is things like celiac disease, where people are intolerant to gluten, or even just general intolerances. For instance, people can't tolerate too much milk, sugar, lactose, which is actually 2/3 of the world would have an intolerance to lactose. There's only about 1/3, mostly people of Northern European origin, generally speaking, there are exceptions to this, are more tolerant to lactose as adults. But so the problem with these food allergen intolerance tests, no, I don't recommend them. Is that the way they work, they test a certain type of immunoglobulin, and it can give so many false positives that it can suggest that you're intolerant to something when you're really not. And so it's to be mindful of them. The best way of assessing if you're intolerant to is excluding that food, and then until you've got no symptoms, maybe for a couple of weeks, and then reintroduce that food and eat quite a lot of it for maybe a couple of days and see if you get a sensation. Make sure you're not got anything on in those days, because if you think you're intolerant to it, then you're going to be causing a reaction. If there's no reaction, you're probably not intolerant to it. Or if there is a reaction, then you've got a really high probability of finding out something. Now, you mentioned that you still eat these foods because you enjoy them. Well, that's up to you. But if there's quite a lot of foods, okay, well, let's look at them. Let's nail them down. Are you really intolerant to them all? I would ask that question. Some of them you no doubt are. But is there a way around this? I'm sure you can still find other foods you enjoy to get good nutrition. Now, there's no one food you should have. In the same way that if people follow me on social media, they'll see that I'm always shouting about fear-mongering and telling people not to have certain foods. I'm equally passionate about telling people there's no food you should have. Foods are not good or bad, quote marks. Diets can be good or bad. Okay, if you habitually make poor food choices, that's probably not great. But it can include the odd treat meals now and again, and vice versa. If you're eating a really, really good diet and then you occasionally have a bit of junk food, that's cool. So I'll answer your question. It's up to you what you'd like to do. But if you're feeling your energy levels are low and you think you're intolerant to food, maybe do these self exclusion diets and really see. And you might feel better, because obviously someone like yourself who does this podcasting and entrepreneurial, you want to feel like you've got a lot of energy. So it's your call really to decide what's your priority: enjoying the foods, maybe, or your energy levels.
Thank you. Tell us about the right balance of acidity versus alkalinity in the stomach. What should we be eating in order to make sure that we are increasing the likelihood of having the right balance, so much so that we are feeling well and we are reducing the likelihood of diseases?
The so-called alkaline diet is a load of rubbish. It's not based on any science. It's been researched. Foods that are so-called acid or alkaline are not necessarily tested for, if you test them, the pH of them are either acid or alkaline. And secondly, the most important thing, if you were to put your finger into your stomach, you wouldn't have a finger. It's such an acid environment that if you consume any food, it's going to be acidic anyway. So I don't subscribe to that way of thinking at all. The pH of a food doesn't matter for the reasons I'm suggesting.
Thank you. Tell us more about Huel. And is it a replacement for eating normally? As in, like, can you have 3 meals of Huel instead of eating normally? Or is it a substitute for, I don't know, your lunch? Or how do you recommend entrepreneurs use it?
The simple answer, and then I'll go a bit more thoroughly. The simple answer is people can have as much or as little Huel as suits them in their lifestyle. For example, we have people that maybe have a couple of meals a day of Huel, of different products at different meals. We've even got a few people that have 100% Huel powders. And we have other people that maybe just have a pouch of Huel in the cupboard to grab and go when they're a bit pushed and they want something nutritious but don't have time. Brilliant. Whatever works for you. So I probably would try and dissuade from people from having 100% Huel. Now, can you do it? Yes, you absolutely can. But like I alluded to earlier, there are other benefits from eating meals with other people, and I also promote variety in the diet. However, if this individual would be making otherwise poor food choices, Huel is going to be a lot better. But I'm more confident with people having the powders for 100% Huel. But look, we've done research trials. There's a published paper in 2022 in Frontiers of Nutrition. I think it was June that year, where we had people for a month who had just Huel, and we looked at key biomarkers and also anthropometric data. That's things like waist hip measurement, certain muscle circumferences, weight, of course, BMI. And everything was either unchanged or improved. Now, we weren't trying to demonstrate that Huel was a cure-all and people must be having it. We were just demonstrating that Huel is fine, and we achieved that. Because I'm not going to lie, I'd love to go out there and say Huel will change people's lives. It'll only change people's lives as a point of view of convenience if they're making otherwise bad food choices. Huel is highly nutritious. We're in an environment where people are making bad food choices that affect themselves, and they're also with high carbon impact that's affecting the environment. Huel products are not only nutritious, they are plant-based and have a low carbon footprint. So they will help if we change meals from meals with animal ingredients in them to maybe things like Huel. It will help reduce the carbon footprint. And the point I like to make is we don't just eat for ourselves. Our food choices also affect others. And by others, I mean humans and non-humans and the environment as well. We're bigger than ourselves.
Thank you. Tell us about the gut biome, and how does eating, for example, Huel products versus eating like normal meals, how would that impact the gut biome? And how can we ensure that we have a balanced gut biome?
Okay, the gut microbiome is something really interesting, and the word balanced gut microbiome, people use it a lot. I don't really know what a balanced one is. So these are all the good bacteria, archaea, and other microorganisms that live in our gut symbiotically with us. We give them somewhere to live and we feed them, and they help us in other ways. They help us digest our food. They help us give energy because we feed them soluble fiber, which is certain types of fiber that you find in fruits and oats and other whole grains, some vegetables as well. And in return, they break them down into little things called short chain fatty acids, which give us energy, but they do so much more. It also been linked to helping reduce incidence of non-communicable diseases, especially cardiovascular diseases like heart disease and stroke. Now, here's the interesting bit, and for entrepreneurs, people may have heard of serotonin, which is they call it so-called happy hormone that helps us feel happy and friendly, but also buzzing and more able to focus. Well, 90% of serotonin isn't released in the brain; it's released in the gut, and it's been shown that a healthy gut microbiome will produce more serotonin, which will then go on and help us feel better and more positive about life. So, what am I saying there is a good fiber intake, especially soluble fiber intake. Omega-3s, again, can have benefits. So Huel, of course, is high fiber. Now, I'm a Brit, so I'm going to give you a UK statistic here. In 2021, the British Nutrition Foundation found that only 9% of adults are achieving the recommended daily amount of fiber, which is probably too low anyway. So, and in America, I know the stats are similar. So we need to be promoting a better fiber intake, and that's both insoluble fiber, which you get from a lot of veg and some whole grains, which helps our gut, and then the soluble fiber, which does all the other really cool things I've just described. So yeah, I can say Huel will support that because our products are high fiber and high soluble fiber, but it doesn't just have to be Huel. I just want people to get plenty of fiber. And this is what concerns me about the very heavy meat diets, because it's not that meat's bad for you, or it's bad for the environment for sure. But it's not bad for you. But it's that what you're not having because you're having the meat, you're missing out on the good stuff from plants as an alternative, which is another reason why we should be maybe cutting back on our meat intake as well as the environment and prioritizing plants more.
Thank you. You mentioned in your book Well Fed that your mom used to make carrot juice, and I've recently started to juice carrots and apples and celery, and I do feel my energy level is a lot higher and I'm feeling overall better. My skin is better. I wonder whether you recommend that entrepreneurs juice different things, including celery, or are you against it?
The answer is I'm probably against it. So let me just put this perspective. My mum, when I was 8 years old, was diagnosed, this was in the 80s, she was diagnosed with what I later found out to be terminal breast cancer. And the first time I'd heard the C word as 8 years old, I didn't know what it was when my parents were telling me that mum was poorly and she'd had this lump in her breast. And it actually turned out that she actually survived 11 years, and she saw me complete my first year doing nutrition at university when I was 19. But part of her philosophy, she changed the way she ate and ate a predominantly vegetarian diet, but also took a lot of other tonics and supplements and things like, as you've mentioned, blending carrot juice. Now, fast forward, and I've studied nutrition for 30 years. I love the dietary approach, and there was a lot of talk about nutrition around the dinner table, and it no doubt was a major influence why I went and studied nutrition and ended up doing a successful career in nutrition. A lot of the other stuff she did is the sort of thing I kind of fight against now, the misinformation, the pseudo supplements and things like that, and the carrot juice would be that. Sure, there was research at the time that indicated a good intake of certain antioxidants like beta carotene, which is found in carrots, could be beneficial for cancer prevention. But then there was a really big study that showed that actually high intake of beta carotene was positively correlated with cancer incidence. Okay, we need to be concerned. So while I'm not saying that it causes cancer at all, I'm just saying it throws a massive nuance in the data and we should be cautious. Now, her skin did take an orange tinge. I remember this as a teenager, having an orange mother. It reminds me of the new US president, maybe. And, we just need to be cautious about that. So I wouldn't recommend juicing anything. And if you do juice, of course, you're throwing away the pulp. What's in the pulp? What have I been talking about for the last few minutes? Fiber. So smoothies I'm probably more of a fan of, but you don't need to. The other thing is about chewing our food is it does help promote satiety. Now, you're going to say, yeah, James, you've got Huel and you've got a drink there, and that's not chewing. Like I said, Huel is for those occasions where people are making otherwise poor food choices. But also, the way I've designed Huel with the macronutrients, the fiber content and the protein content, it's been designed to promote satiety, and we've demonstrated that through research as well. So I would sort of urge people not to juice. Of course, if they like juicing their veg, I'm not going to tell people to do something that, if they like juicing it. But I reckon not many people really, really do like the taste of it.
Thank you. Tell us about further sources of fiber.
The sources of fiber. Okay, so we spoke about fruit and veg, whole grains. Now, whole grains are a key part of the Mediterranean diet. And I bet most of people have heard that everyone's raving about the Mediterranean diet. And there's absolutely, a lot of good information coming from that diet. So you've got the whole grains, then you've got your peas, beans, lentils, your pulses, things like high fiber breads, wholemeal bread, granary bread, things like that. What about breakfast cereals? Well, avoid all the sugary ones, but there's ones like ones that are high in fiber can be great. We've got porridge, oatmeal, and fiber is quite abundant. If you have a plant-rich diet that some of the food, you're being limiting sort of junk plant foods, then you should be getting adequate fiber. But there's one thing to talk about fiber as well that I perhaps should have mentioned earlier. If you are going to increase your fiber intake, you need to increase your fluid intake too, because fiber is like a sponge. Just imagine you've got your sponge by the bath and you haven't had a bath for a couple of days, it's all dry. Imagine trying to pull that through your fingers. It'd be quite hard. Dip it in the water, then it will slide through really, really easily. That's like your digestive system. Plenty of fiber and water helps move things along nice and easily.
Thank you. In terms of Huel, is it mainly for people that are like weightlifters and people who go to the gym, or is it for any entrepreneurs who want to have like a balanced diet?
It's for anybody. Well, people say, who's Huel aimed at? Any adult. So entrepreneurs, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are big Hueligans. That's what we call people who have Huel regularly, because it's convenient. Entrepreneurs are fast-thinking, busy people typically who are maybe grabbing food on the go, having a Huel. They know they've got that nutrition taken care of, and then maybe they can go and enjoy a meal in the evening with their family, a cooked meal. But Huel is ideal for those other occasions, maybe where people are making less food choices. But it's also for anybody who's busy. We have people in more manual jobs who enjoy Huel because they're making bad food choices. Now, I come from the gym scene. I've been training I've been going to the gym for like 35 years. And Huel can be great for those as well because it's got the protein, the fiber, the carbs and the essential fats to support a good gym routine as well. So it's really for anybody. You adapt Huel to suit your lifestyle and your goals.
Thank you. How can entrepreneurs know how much to take in terms of Huel?
So if people do want to count calories, I don't do it myself, but I know some people are a fan of it, then they can fit Huel into their calorie allowance. Now, a typical Huel meal would be 400 calories. That's what we design it at. The bottles, for instance, are 400 calories. But of course, if you're having powdered Huel, you can have as much or as little as you like because you just put more into a meal. So there is no one size fits all, really. If you're trying to lose weight, which again, Huel can support, as long as part of a calorie controlled diet, then you could just have a Huel as one of the meals. And then of course, just 400 calories for most people, that's quite a lot lower than they were probably otherwise having.
Thank you. For entrepreneurs who want to lose weight and at the same time maintain their peak performance, do you recommend they reduce meals from, let's say, 3 meals a day to 2 meals a day, or from 5 meals a day to, 3 meals a day? Or do you recommend they do something different?
So there's been some research on this. And the research, it says it's subjective. It's what suits you. Okay, if you're, let's say, eat at least 2 meals a day, at least 2 times a day, because otherwise you're having a massive load if you just eat once. But for instance, I do the intermittent fasting because I like to have a clear head in the morning so I can focus. I train in the mornings as well, and I do have coffee, but otherwise I probably don't eat till 1 p.m. Other people, they can't function without that breakfast, and they'll need to have a breakfast. So there is no one size fits all. Now, if you're trying to lose weight, the intermittent fasting or the time restricted eating, where you say only eat during a 6-hour window in the day or even a 4-hour window, that can be really helpful because people know, it's not time for me to eat now, so I'm not going to, and they find that quite easy. So if fasting helps you control your calories, that's not the reason I do it, but for other people it is, then that can be really useful. But if you're the sort of person that just likes to eat regularly but have smaller portions, great. If that suits you, do that as well. So again, it's really hard to be prescriptive here. Know your body. And this is where the concept of mindful eating or intuitive eating comes in. Most of us, and I bet a lot of entrepreneurs are doing this, they're just wolfing down their food in a rush, probably not paying attention to the actual food signals, how the food tastes, how it feels, its texture, its smell, even its temperature sometimes. They just want to eat quickly. If you eat slowly, chew your food slowly, pay attention to the food cues, you might actually find you're actually feeling fuller sooner and not needing to eat as much.
Thank you. What kind of supplements should entrepreneurs take to ensure peak performance?
So I'm not a massive recommendation of supplements outside of sports, if we can have a conversation about sports, but I do want to single out a couple of things that are quite interesting here. So if you're having a good diet that's varied, doing everything I've described, you shouldn't need any supplements. However, as a Brit who in the winter at the moment, vitamin D supplements can be useful. This is vitamin D3. Now, some of those preparations come with vitamin K2 because they work synergistically. Now, you've got regular K1, which is involved in blood clotting, but K2 is also helps in maintaining healthy bones. And you'll find that you can get that in the supplements, the same one as the vitamin D. Then there's the omega-3s. I've spoken a lot about these. Now, if you're not having much oily fish, and there's a problem of overfishing as well, so we should be cutting down the amount of oily fish we have, and you're not having good plant sources, then you might want to supplement with a plant form of omega-3s as well. And you can get them from algae supplements. I have some droplets that I can put into other drinks. They're quite convenient. But Huel products, by the way, are high in omega-3s. So other than that, there's only one more supplement I want to talk about that I think might interest the people listening to this podcast, and that's creatine monohydrate. Most people would have heard that in relation to sports, and it's possibly the most widely studied sports supplement ever. We know it's safe, but it's been shown more recently to help in cognition. And a recent study showed that people who had creatine before bed, if they knew they were at risk of having a bad night's sleep and they had a busy day the next day, they focused better on the next day tasks. So if let's say a lot of entrepreneurs are traveling, maybe they're giving a conference or they've got an important meeting the next day, they're a bit worried about the whole jet lag and fatigue from traveling, maybe taking, a couple of heaped teaspoons of creatine at bedtime on those nights, it might actually help them in the performance the next day as a sort of just something to help in the situation they're in. I wouldn't rely on it too much. I'm not talking about mind-blowing results here, but something that could support having to think well after an unfavorable night's sleep.
Thank you. Is there any supplement entrepreneurs can take in order to prevent stress? I mean, I guess not prevent stress, but to cope with stress. The reason I'm asking is because I organize large events for influential entrepreneurs, and my next one is going to have 600 people. And there's tremendous stress that happens in the weeks that are ahead of the event. And I find that at one of my last events, I was actually very dizzy and post-event and had massive migraine. So I wonder whether you'd recommend anything in particular to ensure that entrepreneurs like me coping with a lot of stress take in advance of really stressful situations.
So you can't out supplement a bad diet. So I don't know you, Lily, but I'm guessing you're a busy person. Maybe you weren't eating so well for those periods. So if you're eating try and eat regularly. Make time for your meals. Prioritize your own health, and I'll bet you'll function better. If you have to take half an hour in the middle of the day when you come away from your work and you eat a good meal, or something convenient like one of your smoothies or Huel or something like that, do that. Sit down. And also keep hydrated. You mentioned the headaches. Hydration is going to help prevent that. Have you always got a bottle of water to hand? Are you also sipping it throughout the day? Just these are habits. I'm not saying you have to drink in this way, but if you have not been, having water with you creates habits. And as an entrepreneur, you all know the importance of positive habits. So be mindful of having good food at regular intervals. Make a time, put it in your diary to eat at these times. Caffeine is really good, but are you relying on it too much? I can't speak for you. Some people might be relying on it too much. Maybe if you've got those headaches, maybe cut down. I wouldn't cut it out, because if you go from having 4 coffees to having 0, you're going to struggle more. It's something to cut down on over the weeks. But maybe just a couple of coffees a day. Tea has got a lower level of caffeine. It's still got caffeine. And there's been research that's shown it's not just the caffeine content of these drinks, it's actually the heat itself of these drinks, the hotness, hug from a mug, so to speak, that can help you feel good. So, can you switch out your hot drinks for another hot drink, maybe a mint tea or a fruit tea or something like that? So you've got the hydration, brilliant. You've got the nice tasting drink and the heatness to help you keep it feeling full and maybe trick you into thinking you have a bit of caffeine. So, but you did ask me about supplements, and I do just want to come back to answer your question properly. If your diet's fine, good, but are you having enough omega-3s? I mentioned about the link with the microbiome, and omega-3s are linked to cognition as well. So you might benefit from having an omega-3 supplement all the time, especially during that period. But the good thing is, if you miss a day on an omega-3, it doesn't matter. It's not something you need to have conditionally. You just need to build up the levels in your blood. Is your vitamin D level good as well? And if you do you eat animal produce yourself, Lily? You do. Okay, so you haven't got to worry about B12 or something like that. But that's another. I should just say, going back to that, if people do have a very plant-rich diet and minimal amounts of animal products, then B12 is one that you absolutely should supplement with, because it's almost zero in a completely plant-based diet, vegan diet.
Thank you. Tell us where entrepreneurs can find you and your products.
Me, they can find on LinkedIn. Got a high presence on LinkedIn, very active there. On Instagram as well, I do a lot of information reels with videos with little nutrition tips, probably about 4 or 5 a week. Then I also post my articles, my nutrition philosophy articles on Substack, the platform Substack, where that helps me put down my ideas. My book, Well Fed, is available across the world now on all major platforms like Amazon and Waterstones and WH Smith and Bookstore. And Huel, of course. Huel is Huel.com. And you can read about our products there and get more information. But also, I'd like to think that Huel.com is more than just a place for people to buy Huel. We have a guides and articles section with a load of general nutrition and health advice on there. And some of them we don't even mention Huel in. It's just good. We've got a bunch of nutritionists in Huel, and we're all contributing different perspectives. And yeah, people, if anybody listening to this wants to reach out and say hi on LinkedIn or Instagram, please do.
Follow us for more interviews with world's most influential business titans, providing you with the insights to awaken to your full potential, so you can get paid to be yourself, find true happiness, and manifest anything you desire.